All right, let's dive in. Today, we're digging into a source that looks at one of the most famous and maybe misunderstood words in all of prophecy, Armageddon. And what we're going to find is that this isn't just about some battle in the future. Oh no, it's about the final, epic chapter in a war for the very soul of all creation.
So, when you hear the word Armageddon, what comes to mind? A dusty battlefield in the Middle East? Some kind of metaphor for nuclear war? Well, this article we're looking at today suggests it's something way, way bigger. It's a question that gets to the very heart of a conflict that, according to this source, is older than time itself.
Okay, so here's the big idea from our source material. Armageddon isn't the start of the war. It's the grand finale. It's the last showdown in a massive struggle for dominion, which is really about who has the right to rule and shape creation. And this whole thing kicked off in realms we can barely imagine, long before any human being ever took their first breath.
So for this first part, we've got to go back, way back. The article argues that if you really want to understand how this all ends, you have to understand how it all began. And we're not talking about the beginning of humanity, we're talking about the beginning of the rebellion itself.
The article points to this passage from Isaiah as the origin story of the very first rebel. It describes this incredibly powerful celestial being called the Morning Star, or Lucifer as we know him, who got completely corrupted by his own pride. You see it right there. I will ascend. I will raise my throne. He wasn't content to worship, he wanted to be worshipped, and that pride just spiraled into this full-on rebellion that got him cast out of heaven. But he didn't go alone. He took a whole bunch of other celestial beings with him, and they set up a kind of shadow kingdom with one goal: to undermine the Creator's rule.
So this brings us to a really critical word, dominion. Because when this cosmic war shifted its focus to a new battlefield, planet Earth, the main target became humanity's God-given purpose. The article cites Genesis 1:26, where God says, "Let us make man in our image and let them have dominion." Now, this wasn't just a to-do list. It was supposed to be our identity. We were created to be these go-betweens for heaven and earth, ruling as God's representatives. And it's that sacred job, that mandate, that the fallen morning star wanted to steal.
You know, the whole scene in the Garden of Eden, that wasn't just a random act of mischief. It was a precision strike against our dominion. And think about how clever it was. The serpent didn't come in with force, it came in with a whisper, with deception. It offered this shortcut to being like God, and all it cost was one little act of disobedience. By eating that fruit, Adam and Eve weren't just breaking some arbitrary rule. They were basically signing the deed of their dominion over to another power. And just like that, what was once theirs was now contested territory.
This brings us to the next phase of the whole conflict. You see, after humanity's fall, the rebellion didn't just pack up and go home. According to the article, it actually escalated. It took on a new, much more direct, and, honestly, a pretty terrifying form right here on Earth.
This verse from Genesis chapter 6 is absolutely central to the article's next point. It introduces these beings called the Nephilim. But the real question is, who were these sons of God that fathered them? The article pulls from both Genesis and the non-canonical book of Enoch to make the case that these were a specific group of celestial beings, angels known as the Watchers. They were originally supposed to, well, watch over humanity, but they rebelled.
So the Nephilim, according to this source, were these hybrid children. It says the Watchers came down to Earth, made a pact with each other, and started taking human wives. This was a total perversion of the created order, this forbidden mixing of the celestial and the human, and it was strategic. The goal was to create a new bloodline of rulers, these giant, powerful beings who would essentially be puppets for the fallen angels, allowing them to directly hijack the dominion that God had given to mankind.
But this wasn't just about creating hybrid kids, it was a transaction. The Watchers came with a deal. They offered humanity all this forbidden knowledge in exchange for influence and worship. The Book of Enoch apparently gets super specific, saying one angel taught humans how to forge weapons of war, while another taught them about charms and incantations. This wasn't to help humanity. It was designed to corrupt us from the inside out, to accelerate violence and chaos, and to tighten their grip on the world.
And this is where the article really zooms out and connects some incredible dots. It argues that this story isn't just in Hebrew texts. It's like a universal memory that shows up in myths all over the world. It suggests that the legends of Atlantis, which was supposedly ruled by hybrid children of a god, or the stories of giants and flying machines in the ancient Vedic texts, and even the Sumerian tales of the Anunnaki, the gods who came from heaven, are all just different cultures telling the same basic story. A story about a time when fallen angels and their hybrid kids ruled the planet. The source even points to how Enoch mentions the corruption of animals, creating monsters, which sounds a lot like the creatures from Greek myths. So the Great Flood, in this view, wasn't just about punishing bad people. It was a necessary hard reset for a world where the very source code of creation had been corrupted.
Okay, so giants, fallen angels, a world-ending flood. That all sounds like ancient history, right? Well, the article's argument is, not so fast. The flood might have wiped out the physical bodies of the Nephilim, but the spirit behind that rebellion, that desire to use forbidden knowledge to become like gods, it never really went away. It just rebranded. So the key word here is continuity. The source says you can trace this rebellious idea all through history. From the Tower of Babel, through all kinds of secret societies and mystery schools, it's always the same goal: achieve power, achieve transcendence, but do it without God. And today, the article argues, that very same agenda is just wearing a new mask, the mask of science and technological progress.
To make this point, the article points to this wild prophecy from the book of Daniel. It's about a giant statue where the feet are made of this weird mixture of iron and clay. The source interprets the clay as humanity, organic, made by God from the dust of the earth. And the iron? That's technology, mechanical, cold, hard, crafted by us. Daniel's prophecy says they'll try to mix these two, but they will not hold together. This is presented as a direct prophecy of our modern transhumanist age, this attempt to merge man and machine. And it comes with a built-in warning. This mixture is fundamentally unstable. It can't last.
And that brings us right to our doorstep with this idea of transhumanism. The article frames this not as just an innocent step forward for humanity, but as the modern-day version of the Watcher's agenda. The goal is exactly the same: to break past the limits of our created human form. So things like CRISPR gene editing, brain-computer interfaces, nanotechnology, they're presented not as neutral tools, but as the new forbidden knowledge, promising to make us gods, but with the ultimate risk of cutting us off from what it means to be human in the first place. So how is this whole agenda actually being put into place? Well, the article claims it's being built into a global system it calls the Beast System, straight out of the Book of Revelation. This isn't just one evil dictator, but a whole network of global power structures, financial, political, technological, that operate outside of any real democratic control. The end goal? A world where you can't participate. You can't buy, sell, or travel unless you are fully plugged into their digital system. We're talking digital IDs, biometric tracking, maybe even implants becoming mandatory. It's a system of total control. And the article even makes a startling claim connecting the number of the beast, 666, to a specific tech patent. The point is to create a dependency so total that it forces everyone to choose. Are you with God, or are you with the system? Okay, so after all of that, it all sounds pretty bleak, doesn't it? A war that's been raging since before time, a planet corrupted, and a technological control grid closing in. But right here is where the whole narrative takes a massive, dramatic turn. The article shifts from the rebellion to the divine counterattack. How on earth can humanity's lost dominion ever be restored? The article takes us to this incredible scene in Revelation chapter 5. There's a scroll in God's hand, sealed up tight, and it's presented as being the title deed to planet Earth. But there's a huge problem. A mighty angel shouts out, asking who is worthy to open it and claim what's inside, and the answer that comes back is just devastating: no one. Not in heaven, not on earth, no angel, no human, no created being is found worthy to take back what was lost. The Apostle John, who's seeing all this, just breaks down and weeps because the situation looks completely and utterly hopeless.
And then, in the midst of that hopelessness, comes the answer. The one who is worthy isn't a conquering king in shining armor or a mighty celestial warrior. It's a lamb standing as though it had been slain. This, of course, is Jesus Christ. And his worthiness doesn't come from brute force or worldly power. It comes from his sacrifice.
So this is the crucial point. Why a lamb? Why did it have to be Jesus? The article explains that, legally speaking, since it was a human who forfeited dominion in the first place, only a perfect representative of humanity could rightfully and legally take it back. An angel couldn't do it. A transhuman, upgraded human couldn't do it. It had to be someone who was 100% human, who shared in our flesh and blood, but who was also 100% divine and sinless to bridge that gap. So Christ's victory on the cross wasn't just a spiritual thing, it was a legal transaction that restored the mandate Adam had lost. And that brings us full circle. With the title deed to earth rightfully reclaimed by the Lamb, the stage is now set for that final climactic confrontation that will once and for all end the rebellion. The stage is set for Armageddon. So, drawing from Revelation, the article lays out the endgame in a really clear sequence. First, these demonic spirits go out and deceive the kings of the earth, the leaders of that technocratic beast system we talked about, and they gather them all together for war at this place called Armageddon. Second, the heavens literally rip open, and Christ appears, not as a lamb this time, but as the conquering King of Kings. Third, the battle itself is, well, it's over before it starts. The beast, the false prophet, and all their armies are defeated by the sheer power of his word. No fight, just judgment. And finally, with the rebellion completely crushed and its leaders dealt with, a 1,000-year reign of peace and justice begins on earth.
So, after that whole epic story, what are we supposed to take away from it all? The source material really leaves us with this one stark warning. The story of the Watchers and the Nephilim isn't just some dusty old myth. It's a cautionary tale for us, right now. By chasing a transhumanist future, by trying to merge with machines to become our own creators and overcome our limitations, we are at risk of repeating the exact same prideful rebellion that wrecked the ancient world. It's the same lie the serpent told in the garden, just repackaged for the 21st century. You will be like God.
And that leads us to the final, really provocative question the source leaves us with. This entire cosmic war, from Lucifer's fall in heaven all the way to the final battle of Armageddon, it all boils down to a choice between two kingdoms, two ways of being. One is based on submitting to the Creator and living within His design. The other is based on rebellion, on seizing power for ourselves to become our own gods. The article suggests this isn't some far-off abstract choice. It's a choice that's facing us right now, today. So as this ancient conflict reaches its climax, the question gets put to every single one of us. What path would you choose?